What's blocking your product from getting to the next stage? Maybe that it means you're ready for a product designer. So you've done all the things. You've validated your idea. You've talked to people. You've pitched it. You've gotten some funding. Maybe you've earned. You've gotten some users. It's all come together. Your devs have been working so hard, just pumping out lots of features, putting together it all. And now what? Is it time for a designer? What kind of designer do you even need? A visual designer, a product designer, a UX designer, a UI designer? Full time? Do you even have budget for full time? Do you need a freelancer? These are constantly things that I have conversations with people about where they're not quite sure if it makes the most sense. Everyone can get behind the idea that, yeah, it makes sense to have a product designer to design your product, but is it actually necessary? For certain phases, yeah, well, now I'm biased because I'm a product designer, but it is really important to have a UX designer or a product designer involved for as much as possible. Even if it is really early and you're like, oh, well, the developer just can handle it. Making sure that everything connects, you have the flows, it actually addresses your user's problem, really helpful. Now, let's say that's not you. You don't have a designer yet, and you're still kind of wondering, well, is it too late? Do I need one? Here are 6 signs that you might be ready for a product designer. And this might be what you need to get to that next stage. My name is Elena Haskins, and I'm a product designer, and I run my own product design studio called Onalay. I love working with SaaS founders who have a product that is, good enough to validate, and it's at the MVP stage. But now that you've gotten that green light from your users, maybe you've got a little bit of funding, it's time to start refining that and making that into something that users are obsessed with and that your investors trust. So that's usually where I jump in. But enough about me. I'm going to jump in to show you, do you even need a product designer? When can you know that it might be the right time? So 6 signs. First is your developer designed the first version and now you're moving past the validation stage. This is super common and there's nothing wrong with that. There's so many great AI tools, design libraries, that it is really helpful for developers to just kind of put stuff together. But at the end of the day, that's not their core job. They're not thinking about what is the most functional or what is the most user-friendly or addressing what the user's needs or tying that to the business. Their focus is on the functionality of what's technically possible. How can we bring this to life quickly? So that's why it's really good to have a designer who is more user and business centric working together with your developer. And so especially in the early stages, okay, cool, let's get it out. But after that, when you want to start really refining things, that's when it is really good to bring in someone who is very product focused. And now it will free up time for your developers to be putting all of their time and energy into something that is fully their strength and something that they've signed up to do. And number 2, you have so many product ideas that it's hard to create and keep up with. Maybe you have a really long backlog, and every time you have an idea, you just throw it in there, and then it just somehow ends up, and the developers are just putting it together. And it's starting to feel a little bit Frankenstein. That might be a really good sign you need to bring in a product designer because they can look at it from that high level and actually think about the architecture of, okay, if we have this feature, where could that fit? How can we connect it so it doesn't feel like we're just dropping it in? And it feels seamless that you can get from A to B to G to Z to C without it feeling like, ooh, we have to go in this very prescribed order because that's the only way we made it. Number 3, you've talked to your users, but you haven't done, a user test where you actually observe them using the tool. It's great to talk to your users and say, hey, what do you think about the app? Do you have any feedback? But they're probably not going to be honest with you, especially if it's someone you know. So ideally, you have something that's a more official user test. And maybe you're doing this already, but you're putting the product in front of them, you're watching them do it, and you're giving them tasks like, walk me through how you'd create a report. And you sit back and you actually see what they're doing. What are they clicking? Have them speak out loud. Where are they getting confused? And then you can ask more follow-up questions of oh, okay, what would you expect to happen on this page? Or, tell me a little bit more about this. So those really big open-ended questions where you can start getting into the minds of people and seeing, oh, we might need to adjust that because a lot of people get really confused about what this button does. Or no one seems to really know what this does. Maybe we should work on that. Number 4, you feel embarrassed when showing someone the app saying, I know it's ugly right now. Product designer, there is design in the name. While a lot of people do think that a big part of UX and a big part of product is, making it look nice, that is a small part of it, and it is really important. So using design libraries and setting that up so it is scalable. So you have that consistency of, even if you have a growing team and you're bringing outside people in, or you're growing your internal team, you're all using that same library. Now you can pull from that, and a lot of them are connected to development documentation, and that is really ideal, using those open source libraries. But you want to make sure you have someone who knows how to update those, how to get your branding into them, so then you can all keep using those same components, so then it's a lot easier to scale, and you're not just accruing all this like random design and development debt that you'll never use again because you keep moving so quickly and not using anything ever again. Number 5. You feel like too much of your time is designing the screens, and that's not even your job. That's pretty common. In startups, you are all wearing lots of hats. And I'm sure you're doing a pretty good job with the hand that you're dealt. But there's so many things that your business needs that are your strength. And that's like why you're there. Either you're the founder or the product manager or your developer. You're there because you're really good at that. And you can do all these other things, but imagine how much more marketing you can do if that's like more what you could put your energy towards. Or your founder, you can do more of those sales calls, you can do more pitching, you can do more refinement, you can think more strategy, instead of getting into the nuance of like, ooh, this is how everything needs to look, this is all the pixel pushing, this is how this ties to this. If you bring in someone who's a dedicated person, they can probably do it a lot quicker for you, so then you can actually start scaling in all these other directions. And then the last one, I guess I swapped this. Bonus. Your devs are reworking the same features over and over. So rework usually happens when there's not clear requirements that everyone has understood and prioritized. A big part of being a product designer is thinking about what does the business need and what do the users need, and how can we meet them in the middle. So it's putting together that roadmap, and usually sometimes this overlaps with like a product manager does it. If you don't have a product manager, usually the product designer does this. Or at least in my experience, like I'm usually the one who does this. But you look at all the things that people want to build, and then you have this conversation of, okay, what is more of a priority? Why? Okay, can we move something around so it fits in your roadmap? So it feels a little bit more strategic than just, hey, build this, hurry, build this. And then all of a sudden, the things you really wanted get pushed or get smushed in there. And then it looks really chaotic. You're stressed because everything feels like a fire. Your users feel that stress in the product because it feels a little bit more disjointed. And everyone is just under this extra pressure cooker. When if you had someone who that's their job is to come in and look at it from that product perspective, that would be very helpful and can take off some of the stress from your team. And then the last one is you haven't accounted for plan B. This is when users aren't following the happy path. The happy path is referring to what is the ideal steps that someone would take. Oh, they sign in, they go here. Oh, all good. But what happens if they get confused? What happens if they get lost? What if they are missing information? What if they make a mistake? Have you accounted for that? Some UX mistakes, they're expensive. In 2020, Citibank had a huge mistake where someone accidentally, sent $900 million instead of $7.8 million because of confusing interface. It was really outdated, and they couldn't tell the difference between like a principal balance and the interest balance, and an employee accidentally sent the wrong amount. And it wasn't all recouped. So someone probably lost their job over that. What if a really important input is represented insignificant, but it gets missed? UX mistakes could also kill people. I know that's really intense, but you got to think about some of the gravity behind it. If you're a B2B person, you're probably doing some intense workflows that have repercussions around it. So for example, in 2017, there was an unassuming checkbox that was locking controls on a ship. But because people didn't really understand what it was doing, it locked the controls, and then they couldn't get control of the boat, and then boom, it collided into a tanker, and then 10 people died. But, on a more less morbid example, what happens if someone on a team leaves, but they're the owner of a lot of files? What happens to those files? Do they just disappear? Do they get erased? Do they get transferred to someone? Who do they get transferred to? That happens a lot in like Google Docs. Maybe you have a freelancer or a contractor or just someone in-house who leaves. What goes on? Is your product simple enough to use in a high stress environment? A lot of you might be working with people who are using your tool under a lot of stress, either from, they're working under high deadlines, they're managing really big assets, or they're doing something with medical, and it could be the difference between someone overdosing. Do you have it so simple that someone who's like, oh my God, here are all the things, or maybe they're really tired because they are a doctor and they're a surgeon and they've been up for like 40 hours. Have you thought about how your product exists in those states when people aren't on their best behavior, their favorite mood? They didn't wake up with a good cup of coffee. They actually are in a pretty bad mood. And now they have to come to work and they're using your tool. Not that your tool is supposed to like save the day for everybody, but you don't want it to make anything worse. You're out here to change how things work, to make things better. So don't add extra stress to that. So there are your 7 signs that you might be ready for a product designer. Now you might also be wondering, okay, do I want in-house, full-time? I guess the same thing. A consultant, fractional, freelancer. It's really up to one, budget. So when you're thinking about a full-time person, there's a lot of overhead. The bonus of it is, okay, now you have the person who is just dedicated on that. And so now they will be able to be like moved and finessed in the way that you need. But also think about with agencies, consultants, or like more senior level fractional people, their job is to be managing those accounts and like be handling that product. So I wouldn't be scared off that, they're not as dedicated to the product, or they won't really understand the product. They will, because that's like their expertise of being able to jump into something and then just nitty gritty hitting the road running. That's at least one of my favorite parts of being a product designer who gets to work in different industries. It's like I get to work in something that I would never, as a person, really jump into. But now I know way too much about like pipelines and like manufacturing filters. Who knew? Freelancers are really helpful if you do have a list of things and you just kind of want done. So that usually will have a little bit more hand-holding because they are more about just like output and less of a strategic thing. But at the end of the day, you really just need to have conversations with the people who you're about to hire because it's all pretty similar. Whatever title you put in front of it, the most important thing is, can you build a great product? Are you cool to talk to? Do you ask questions that actually are thought-provoking? Can you bring the product into a state that's better than when you first found it? Can you talk to users in a way that make them feel safe and trusted, where you can pull information, not in like a sketchy way, but like they trust you to share their experience? Do you have someone who can analyze and look for patterns and being able to connect those patterns to what your business needs, but also what's already in your roadmap? Do you have someone who can say no if something doesn't make sense, but also someone who can be collaborative and say, oh, well, how come? Do you have someone who can take this and see how does this connect so it doesn't feel like things are so siloed? So whoever that person is, it doesn't have to be me. You might still need a designer. Now, if you are ready to get UX design product off your plate, feel free to schedule a 20-minute strategy session with me and we can talk through that. We can talk about user testing, auditing, whatever you need to kind of get you to the next level. But regardless, it doesn't have to be me. I just want to make sure that you have whatever you need and you can find the right person to help your product and your people get to where they need to be.